Good day, everybody. Lucas Welsh here, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about violin bridges. All right, there's been a few questions out there recently about what some of the different shapes mean and styles, and different cuts of bridges, why some are flatter, why some are more arched. Some people believe that, a fiddle player should have a flatter arch on their bridge than a classical player that should be more arched. Um, and there's different opinions on that. So I've got a few bridges out here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just run down. Okay. So what we've got here is a variety of old bridges that have been pulled off of fiddles or whatnot. This is kind of a typical stock bridge. Okay. You can see it's quite thick. It's quite tall. The feet are, they have no arch to them, more or less, to fit the violin. So when you get a violin in, and it needs a bridge, or you're putting a bridge on a new violin for the first time, kind of a thing, there's a lot of factors that go into it. There's the placement of the bridge, and it's got to be centered, aligned with the fingerboard, the tailpiece, and then what we do is I'm going to just switch this back up. So what we do is we take a violin. I'm going to try and show you. And we set that on there. And you may be able to see there's some big gaps there. So we eyeball that. That's right, we eyeball it. We go up here, we put it on there like that. We go, okay, I need to take a lot of meat off the inside toe, And I want to get these down to a certain thickness anyway. And then I want them to be a certain thickness this way as well. It's all relative to the violin as well, and part of the shaping and part of the thicknessing and everything. It all affects the tone to some degree. Okay, but we're going to show you a couple different bridges here. Okay, and I've got two kind of extremes right off the bat. Okay, so you can see this one at the top has quite an arch. Okay, and the high side would be the bass side, so like your G string, and the low side would be the E string. You see on the bottom, this would be what people would be considering more of a fiddle bridge, if you will. It's got a lot flatter arch, more even across the strings, all those types of things. Now here's what's going to happen, okay? So the myth, if you will, and it's partly myth, partly not myth. So every player likes a little bit different feel on their instrument. And that takes years to determine what you like, what you don't like, Somebody that's just picking up the violin for the first time, this is the bridge I'm going to put on their violin. Okay, and I'm going to do that because I want to give them as much clearance as I can between the strings. So you think of this pencil as a bow. Okay, if I'm on the E string, and I'm going to try and get this so that you can see the notches. Let's just, I'm gonna make a couple little lines here where the notches are for the string so I can represent this a little better, okay? I'm on the E string right there. Look at how much clearance I've got to the A string. Same thing when I get onto the A string. I've got lots of good clearance and lots of good clearance between the strings. For a beginner player, that's important. Okay, because if you put this bridge, and again, I'm just going to mark the strings out here, more or less. Whoops, and then I'm going to drop it. You put this bridge on that same fiddle, and you get on there, you've got a lot less room for error with your bow. Okay, That's for me, that's the big reason why we go with this. Okay. Um, this also requires a lot more bow movement. Because you think about, I know you look at this and you go, well, okay, that's only, what are we at there? We might be at 2 millimeters worth of height. But you put 2 millimeters on a bow that's out here, and now I got to move that stick considerably to get to the next string. I mean, we're talking, whatever they call that. Like, it's compounding, right? The more length you put on it, the more movement you have to make. So that's the main difference between what I would consider a fiddler's bridge and a classical bridge. And again, if I'm putting a bridge on a beginner fiddle for somebody, this is the bridge I'm going to put on every time, because it gives them the best opportunity at playing clean, and doing all those things. Now we're going to go into just a little bit of depth about, because this bridge here has been very finely cut. Okay, it's been expertly crafted by somebody in the past. They did a very nice job. They've opened things up a little bit. I'm going to point out a few things to you here, okay? So the number one thing, there's lots of varying details here. I'm going to point out a few things here, okay? So the feet have been thinned down, and I'm talking top to bottom here now. So the feet have been thinned down as much as they could. Any more, and this bridge would be unusable. Even at this, I probably would have left a little more meat myself. You can see that there's a nice taper, a beautiful taper. I'm going to angle it up here. That comes to a very fine point in here. Okay. Every bridge and the way every maker cuts them is quite different. I mean, we're talking now about going from this to this. Okay. So you can see the details. I'm going to grab them in one hand here. Okay. The eyes have been opened up major on this bridge. And there's so when they cut this point in here, they also took meat off the bottom edge to bring that all up. You can see the arching in the bottom has been done nicely to match, generally match the curvature of the top of the violin. And then there's been a little bit of artistic work done here with a little notching, that you don't get otherwise. So this has been an expertly carved bridge by someone that knew what they were doing. And you asked me why we're carving the bridge. So high-end makers are going to make their own bridges. They're going to cut blanks of maple, quarter sawn. They're going to make their own bridges. And then they're going to go with a knife. This is the only thing I've got close to me, which is an X-Acto knife. A lot of those guys are going to be, some are using an X-Acto knife, and that works just fine, because you can just change the blade out when it gets dull, and you're done. No sharpening, no loss of time, but it does cost money to replace the blades. Anyway, they're going to use a knife of some sort. Okay, and they're going to just carve that away. Okay, there's tricks and tips and whatnot to get that carved out. You're going to do it with a knife, and the reason you're going to do it with a knife is because a knife will always give you a crisp edge. It's not going to round it over. I can go, and I can use sandpaper. I can put a, this is not the best piece here. Yeah, I can go cut a small piece of sandpaper. I can lay it on there. I can put this on, and I can work back and forth or however I want. They make jigs for this, with a wheel, and I've got one. I've used it in the past. Nowadays, I cut everything by hand with a knife. But when I first started working, it just seemed faster, right? And it was faster because, let me tell you, you start cutting with a knife, but you get such a finer product with a knife. Your edges, when you do sandpaper, you have a tendency to roll the edges. Even if it's in a jig, you can get rolled edges a little bit. You're never going to get quite as crisp a cut with sandpaper. You'll get a nice fit, don't get me wrong, and for a lot of people, for a lot of violins, that's probably okay. But you know, for when you're leveling up in violins, in your craftsmanship and all that kind of stuff, you want to do everything is done with a knife on a violin. You know, like F holes. That's all. You know, they cut out the rough parts and then they go with a knife and they cut. You know, they fine detail that because you can get a straight edge that's got crisp corners. The sound post inside, that's all cut to fit with a knife. We're gonna do another little series on the sound post. But anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit about bridges, and I could talk more about bridges, but you know, people don't want to listen to me talk about bridges for days. So anyway, hope you guys are having a great day. Cheers.